Today, we'll be learning about the good ways of doing Flutter refactoring and the evil ways. So, let's get started. Firstly, it's nice to agree on a definition of refactoring, because we can also have a definition of done, as we usually do in bigger companies or even when we are working with other people. But we often think about the definition of refactoring and other things. Not really. So, the best definition which I've read is coming from the book by Martin Fowler, Refactoring, Improving the Design of Existing Code. It's really a nice read. I recommend it if you have too much time, or like reading technical books. And the definition is as follows. Refactoring is the process of changing a software system in a way that doesn't alter the external behavior of the code to improve yet it improves its internal structure. It's a very important thing. We are changing the underlying code, but we don't change how it works outside of it. And the last sentence here, it is a disciplined way to clean up code that minimizes the chances to introduce bugs. I don't know if it's a disciplined way in many cases. Sometimes we are doing refactoring very haphazardly, but the best approach is, of course, to do it in a structured manner. So, let's go. Firstly, a question to you. Who has done any kind of refactoring in Flutter at all? I guess most of you have done. Great. The agenda for today is as follows. Firstly, we'll learn about the anti-patterns of refactoring in Flutter. We'll then find the right mindset for doing the refactoring. And at the end, we'll learn about some practical tips and tricks and other things concerning refactoring in Flutter. So, firstly, how to fail while doing refactoring. Then we'll find our purpose in refactoring, and then how to succeed. So, as we know, your code is always totally obvious. You have to delete any possible comments in code. You don't question why somebody left a comment, you just delete it because you don't like it, for example. And of course, your future self and other teammates will thank you for your pretty commentless code. And for bonus point, for this anti-pattern, is to delete or argue about comments left by others. And of course, you don't have to contribute to common documentation because why? It's not necessary. Next anti-pattern is to make every possible change at once. If you encounter anything that needs refactoring, you are just doing it, jumping into it, and not thinking about like broader plan. Let's introduce huge complexity in the code and have it difficult to roll it back later on. And for bonus points, I guess we are all guilty of it sometimes, is to not do any incremental commits. Then let's work in the stealth mode. Let's not inform any other teammates what we are doing. Let's then push giant unexpected changes with your refactoring after a few days of your hard work. And for the bonus points of this anti-pattern is to ignore PR comments, which later your teammates might leave you, like, why have you changed it? Why so many changes? It breaks my PR or other things. And also, please don't review your changes. Next, testing. What testing? Of course, you don't have to do any tests. Delete what already is there because they fail, of course, and it takes too much time to refactor your tests. And for bonus points, paste without checking AI-generated tests. I've actually encountered it a few times that somebody pasted tests which were generated by AI and they contained bugs because they were testing the feature which was implemented in an improper way. And the test confirmed that, yeah, indeed, it works in an improper way, but nobody checked it, the PR went through it. It was a mess. And I was also guilty of it. Recently, I had to change some code because the test which AI generated for me, which I didn't like properly check, was kind of wrong. Next, no plan, no problem. Who needs specific goals? Let's refactor anything that looks interesting. And for the bonus points, over-focus on minor refactorings. Sometimes we might be guilty of refactoring little things that don't really matter, that we might completely fine leave alone, but we are still trying to change them. And let's make code your own. We have our own preferences when it comes to coding, of course, as everyone does. So we have to make the code our own and implement all of the practices which we like without considering what the team might want and what might be better for the project overall. And this is very Flutter specific. Libraries are fun. There's always this one teammate or somebody who likes using all the possible libraries for everything, while sometimes it might be better actually to write this on your own because your implementation might be simpler, better, and in full control. Next, let's not reflect on outcomes. Let's never do any retrospective after bigger refactorings or any postmortems. And unfortunately, it's very common that when somebody breaks something during refactoring or some other kind of work on the project, they don't acknowledge they've broken something, and they try, oh, it's not a big deal, we can live with it, I will fix it later. And when it comes to refactoring mindlessly, we might also follow the refactoring plan blindly and end up with atrocities in our code. When we are creating button config that contains so many properties which we actually don't use in the code, it might be actually better to revisit our approach and not do it at all. These are actual code examples, unfortunately. And we can also have like enum cs no with value cs and no, which might be used only in one place in code, for example. So it's an overkill to create an enum for it, for example. And for the bonus points, when doing refactoring, we can extract widgets without giving them any overhaul, just copying and pasting to a new file widgets from one bigger file. Next slide, give me a second. Great. Let's go back. Next question. What's the most significant refactoring you've done in a Flutter project? And what were the outcomes? Anyone wants to share any story, even a short one?
So the biggest refactoring we did was migrating platform channels to Pigeon and partially to FFI Gen. So it helped us a lot.
Did it went?
So it took time because for the user perspective, nothing changes. That's the most important thing that you need to sell to managers that basically after spending hours, days, the product will stay the same, but developers will be happier afterwards. And this was the most challenging part.
I see. Thank you very much.
In my case, my biggest refactor was changing the whole UI layer of application without changing domain and data layer. But we didn't drop the whole UI layer, but we, instead of dropping it, we just refactored like widget by widget because we want to stay with the same qubit implementation. And the outcome was like, it was much nicer to work with the new UI was like better for users, but also it was much better place for developers to work with.
Great, thank you. So it's nice to hear that your refactorings went smoothly. And now, another quote from the book by Martin Fowler. Any fool can write code that a computer can understand, but only good programmers write code that humans can understand. And it's so important to get this point, because usually we are writing code, and at a given moment it seems totally obvious to us, but later when we are returning to it after a month, two, or even if some other teammate wants to make changes, nothing might make sense, or just understanding the code might take 10 minutes, 30 minutes or more before we can make any meaningful changes, while sometimes better naming or just helpful comments might give a long shot to improving the code and understanding of the code by humans. So, a quick guide now. We are finding our purpose in refactoring, and we are learning how to not go mad while doing the refactoring. So, first, of course, we need to define our objective of refactoring. It's the most important thing. Then, when we already have the objective, we have to review the part of the code that needs changing. After we've reviewed the part of the code that needs changing, we need to understand it, and usually then we need to refine the objectives, because only when we actually get how the code works that we'll be refactoring, we can be sure that our objective is correct. Sometimes it might happen that we will have to do more work than we originally anticipated, because there are some other dependencies, or just the part of the code that we are refactoring touches many parts of the application, and more work actually needs to be done. So, after we've refined our objective or settled with the original one, we should write tests if it is possible. Sometimes we might skip it due to the nature of development work and deadlines, but if it's possible, and especially if we love doing test-driven development, we shall do it. Next slide, please. Great. And it's very important to remember that while doing the refactoring, we shall focus on the objective. And if other ideas for refactorings or those things that we need to do come to our mind while doing the refactoring, we shall write them down as soon as possible so they won't slip our mind, and we definitely shouldn't be doing them on the go, just to be done with what we want to do regarding the refactoring, and then tackle the other parts, other things that came up to our mind. And it's very important, especially for me, because sometimes bigger refactorings might be really challenging. So tackle the hardest things first, the parts that you don't like the most, and then it will be only downhill, and the refactoring will go smoothly. Please do one chunk at a time, and test at least manually or with some automated tests, whatever you have in the project, very frequently. Because the longer our code is in a broken, not working state, the worse the refactoring outcomes might be. So testing often is so important. And then we can and we should actually do a code review. Either ourselves on our own code, or ask some teammate, large language model, or whatever other tool we use to check our code and how the changes affect the code base. Next, an important topic is the topic of switching heads. Switching heads is changing from your refactoring role to your feature writing role, let's say. So when we actually need to change head to your refactoring head for doing changes before implementation of new features. So if we want to implement a new feature, but our code base is not ready for it, we are switching head to refactoring and doing solely the refactoring. If we've just written some nice new feature and we want to optimize it a little bit, make some adjustments, then we are switching head to the refactoring head, and we are just doing the small refactoring. And if we see some problem in the code base, then we acknowledge it, switch our head to the refactoring head, and just focus on this small, simple change for a given moment. And it's very important to remember what we are doing at given time. If we are trying to write features and do refactoring at the same time, there might be some unexpected bugs introduced, which might be hard to catch later, or it might be really hard to keep clean Git history, and many other challenges arise. So it really helps me to notice whether I am in my refactoring mode or in feature writing mode, to keep my work of better quality, and just to go more smoothly with refactorings or writing features. And another question to your audience: what are the signs of things that need to be refactored, or just things that scream bad code, smelly code, you noticed in the projects overall?
So one of the bad code smells is that we change the same code very often, but like not change by adding any code, but like refactoring it like not once, like not the whole file at the same time, but like line by line sometimes. Like very often, very small changes is one of the indications for me.
For me, the main indication is when you basically don't understand what's going on there. So you look into the code and you need a lot of time to just come up with the idea why it was done this way, and the whole thing looks simple. So you don't really need to like overcomplicate or engineer things. And of course, I'm not like a super big fan of the book clean code, but there are some rules which we all need to follow, like no jokes in the code, no F words or other stuff, and like it's just respect to developers who will probably read our code later.
Yes, thank you very much. I definitely agree that when some part of code is changed very frequently, it often means that something's wrong with it and it has to be handled. And if you are doing refactoring, you have to do it properly and not make any jokes in code which might just obscure the real meaning.
4,000 or 5,000 lines classes, like with state management and data layer, like I mean everything involved in one place. So it looks smelly, or like nested ifs with like 7 levels of nesting. So for me, it's like not really good sign.
Yes, definitely. Recently, I was reviewing one open source package called RustDesk. It's an alternative to AnyDesk, but written in Rust, and the front end is in UI, is in Flutter, and the main view was like huge, like a few thousand lines of code, I believe. So it was atrocious, and I didn't even like go to reading it.
Sorry, just a question, by the way. Was it example? Because
No.
Because in the example you just need to put everything in one main file, because we have it also in our Flutter plugin, just to showcase the whole example in the pub.dev.
It was actual production code of the Rust. Okay, anyone else wants to share their code smells? Okay, then let's move on. Here are some more refactoring and code smells that I've identified during the years. If during refactoring your code is broken for a few days, then it means that something is wrong with it, and your approach to refactoring this part of the code base might be wrong. If there is no or low test coverage, it might mean that something's wrong with the code. Sometimes we are working without writing any tests, and it might be okay too. But in general, having at least tests for like core business logic is really helpful to guard us from ourselves in the future, and also from our teammates who might be modifying some logic without understanding what it does. If we are disregarding work in progress of others, it's really also some other refactoring smell, because if you are doing refactoring, it might take a few days, for example. And your other teammates might be working on the same place in code, and you might run into too many unnecessary conflicts, which can be really avoided if you just talk with your teammates, agree who does what, so the work will go smoothly. And in Flutter, it might be tempting to do premature optimization, like introducing some repaint boundary widgets, but most of the times Flutter is really performant, and unless you really encounter some dropped frames, it's better to keep the optimization part for the later stage of developing some feature rather than trying to do it at the same time. Especially that if you are trying to do over-optimization or just optimization while writing some feature, it might firstly take you much longer to write a given feature, and secondly, it might not be the best solution overall. It's better to then focus why it doesn't work performantly, why it is too slow, and solve these issues later on. But most of the times in Flutter, it's good enough to leave it as it is and only tackle the problems when they actually arise, when our code isn't, for example, working performantly on like lower-end devices. If we are forgetting template documentation, it's often also a refactoring slot if you're working in bigger organizations or in bigger teams. And the chronic postponement of necessary refactors is also a really pain point of most people and organizations. You have so many ideas how to improve the code, but there's never time to actually do it. And sometimes it's perfectly fine to let it go. Even though some places in our code bases might be poorly written, maybe not perfectly performant, if it's working okay and nobody complains, it's better to let it go than to just waste 8 hours or more trying to make it as perfect as possible. And as I said previously, we need to prioritize readability before performance tuning. Firstly, the code needs to be readable, and then we shall do any performance tuning, while trying, of course, to keep the code as readable as possible. And if we are doing any workarounds, we should leave comments there about them. Recently, I've been exploring a few open source repositories of Flutter applications, and in the repositories where I found comments, it was so much easier for me to read this code compared to the repositories where there were no comments at all, and I had to figure out from the code itself what it does, even if there were some tricky parts or non-standard uses of some features. And of course, always remember to keep your widgets small. It's easy to overgrow your widgets, but if you're keeping them small, it's so much easier to avoid many problems. And sometimes it might be also a really good idea to do a quick fix, but it might backfire on us later on, so we need to be mindful of it. As was said previously by someone in the audience, if we are patching the same code over and over again, it might be better to just focus, do a long-term solution, and be done with it. And who uses LLMs for refactorings? Raise your hand, please. Quite a few people. Nice. During refactorings, it's nice to leverage LLMs and rubber ducks, whether they are actual rubber ducks or just your friends or some other objects to which you can talk to. If you're stuck, if you don't know how to solve some problem, it's nice to describe it in text or speech. Then we need to feed it to your favorite friend or tool, because by the sole act of speaking through our issues, we often might be able to find the answers to them, or just be guided by our friends. And it's nice to write down as many actionable points as possible, even if they are stupid. It's nice to write them down, to eliminate them later, and focus on the one best solution. And when we actually have them, just evaluate and try to implement. These are some just example prompts. The actual prompts, which I and you probably use, are much longer, but the general gist is to use LLMs also to have it explain to us how given widget works, where this widget is used, what are the dependencies of given module, let's say. Because LLMs nowadays can really help us catch many corner cases, places where something is used, so we don't skip them. And also it's nice to have your PR reviewed by some LLM. For example, now in GitHub you can ask Copilot to review your PRs. I find it really helpful because it catches all my typos usually, and even some logic errors. Recently there was also announced an official MCP server from Flutter. So if you don't know, MCP server helps your LLM agent to do their work better by giving them additional tools. Like, for example, this Flutter MCP server allows them to actually do some actions, to browse the documentation, to resolve symbols, to see errors, and run tests, and many others. It's really helpful. During refactoring, we sometimes might have to think outside the box. With this, sometimes LLMs might help us, but most of the times the best outside-the-box solutions still might come from actual humans. Sometimes rewriting the library might be better than using some ready one, especially if it contains errors or some other problems. We might think and anticipate some refactorings for the future. If we want to write some bigger feature in the future, then it might be better to do now some bigger refactoring to anticipate it, to achieve business goals easier in a few months. And we shouldn't make assumptions. It's always nice to check, even checking the actual PRs which were made a few months ago or a few years ago. Why was given a piece of code written in such a way, so we can confirm if it was just a mistake or the developer had something in mind. Because while making assumptions, we might be skipping some corner cases which were handled previously, and we might be discarding them now while doing some refactoring. And it's always nice to check for leftovers too. Sometimes when we are doing some refactoring, let's say we are moving one button to use some standardized button from our design library, there might be some unusual uses of buttons in our code base which we've missed, and we need to discover them and also use our new button. And by doing such exploration, we might also find some other actionable points to do more refactorings in the future. And as said previously, never overcomplicate. If something is too complicated to explain to other people, it might be time to step back and think it through and come up with a better solution. And another question, who overcomplicated their code in a project? For sure. Yeah, I see plenty of people doing that too. And as you know, your IDE can help you with basic refactoring. You can wrap with widget, remove this widget, extract some methods of widget. It's very common to use such features of IDE. Some extensions offer other actions like block extension for VS Code, and Android Studio offers us to wrap some widget with block builder and others. If we find that doing some snippets might be useful, we can easily do them in Visual Studio Code and Android Studio. These are called snippets or live templates. For me, I've never found any use for them, but maybe for your domain-specific things, it may be useful. You can easily write a snippet, have places in the snippet where your cursor will be inserted, so you can write some code there, and even have your selection there. And here's a short example of this scaffold plus block snippet which I wrote. And because I was curious how this block extension works for VS Code, I decided to delve into its code base and see if I can write something on my own. I think when I prepared this presentation in the beginning of this year, there were no extensions that allowed you to wrap your code with if statements, or if with braces, or just with ternary operator. So sometimes if you have an idea how to improve your workflow, you can just do it, basing on what others have already done. So I managed to write a simple refactoring extension myself. Maybe it's not perfect, but it works for me, and I quite often find myself using it just to wrap some widget with if, or if with spread operator. Also, I've introduced an option to wrap my widget with ternary operator. If I play this video, I can select given two widgets, execute an action to wrap with ternary operator, and I just need to write the condition. In my workflows, it's quite useful. If you find it useful too, you can install my extension. It's available freely on the Visual Studio Marketplace. And if you have ideas for your own extensions, yeah, it's quite easy to write them nowadays, especially with LLMs. And you can just check out the code of other extensions and base your own on it. One more thing, which is quite useful, is to be up to date with the linter rules. The linter rules come and go, so it's nice to be aware what are the currently available ones, because why write our own if we can use what Flutter already has to offer? I've also found one interesting thing, that the Flutter team has decided, I believe, to remove the const requirement linter rule, because somebody have done some benchmarks, and in these benchmarks they've noticed that adding const doesn't give any significant performance gains. Actually, it's not true. I've seen many videos and tested it myself that sometimes adding const before your widgets might give you better performance, and you might avoid having skipped frames or just junks in your application. So don't trust every benchmark you see on the internet, because it might be false, unfortunately. Okay, next slide. There is a very good analysis package by Very Good Ventures. For my personal projects, I usually use it because I like my rules strict. But if you prefer to skip some of the rules which they offer in this package, you can of course disable them too. But it's a very good starting point. And recently, 1 month ago, in Dart 3.10, analyzer plugins were introduced. Now, thanks to them, you can easily write other plugins for analyzer, so you can implement your domain-specific things and have them enforced by the MCP server, which your LLM might use, and by the teammates. Also, you can write quick fixes, so you can easily migrate, let's say, buttons to your specific design system button. I haven't tested them yet, but as far as I've looked into the implementation, it's quite nice. It's much more easy to write them now compared to how it was previously. So if you ever in your projects or in your company notice the need of some domain-specific analyzer plugin, yeah, you can try to do it. It might not take too much time actually. Oh, and one more thing, it might be, for example, useful to write an analyzer plugin which will prohibit the use, for example, of build context in blog. I've seen many projects where the blogs were using build context, and programmers were fighting whether we should allow it or not. And if some decision is made, we can enforce it with our own linter rules. So the key takeaways from this presentation are always refactor with a goal in mind, and don't be afraid to change the goal based on the information you've gathered during the refactoring. Always try to keep your code working, because the longer the code isn't working during refactoring, the higher the chance for making mistakes and bugs. Prefer readability rather than performance. Especially in Flutter and UI-specific applications, it's better to have it readable by the developer than not. And use tools wisely. And if you have ideas for your own tools for things that might enforce rules on the organization, feel free to experiment and do, because it's quite easy in the Flutter ecosystem. The cute dashes in my presentations were created using the dash avatar. It's a nice Flutter website where you can pick your strengths and generate a cute dash for yourself. So thank you very much for your attention, and good luck with your refactorings. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and let's start the discussion.